Good evening, everybody. My name is Henrik, and welcome to our Dumont University live stream on what is UCAS and how to make a UCAS application. Just before we start, I should probably introduce my colleague and co-host Ben. How are you doing?
Hello. Yes, not too bad. Surviving the wet weather we've had over the bank holiday.
Yeah, it's a bit miserable, isn't it?
Yeah,
a bit of a downer, but hopefully sun starts to pick up as COVID starts to come to an end and lockdown starts to ease, and we can start to enjoy some of the weather. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
It would indeed.
So just to sort of give you guys a quick run through of some of the things that we're going to discuss today, we can let you know sort of what UCAS is all about, how to make an application, and then sort of what to expect after you've made your application and on the lead up to results day, and then sort of results day and beyond. Do encourage you to keep it be interactive as possible. So leave any comments you can, any questions for Ben and myself on all topics regarding applying to university, UCAS, or anything about DMU or university in general. Please do feel free to answer any questions, and we do appreciate you giving up your evening to watch this stream tonight. What is UCAS? Giving you an idea of sort of what UCAS is all about. It's probably a good place to start. It's really quite scary, actually. Just thinking back now, I think it was coming up to 10 years ago now that I sent off a UCAS application. And I think you might be similar, might be 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is
very similar.
Terrifying. So 10 years ago, we were in the same position as you guys. Can't believe, where's the time gone? But yes, absolutely terrifying. But yeah, UCAS itself, UCAS just stands for the University College Admission Service, and it is the sort of localized central hub for all the UCAS, all the university applications for undergraduate courses. So if you want to go study an undergraduate course at university, you'll apply for UCAS. So all your applications will go through there, and it's also a really, really good tool. And it has a lot of resources that you will need when you comes to you actually doing your research for university. So on the UCAS website, they've got all the universities, they've got all the courses, they've got a breakdown of those courses. So all the things like the modules and the placements and all that good stuff that you need to look at when it comes to you actually sort of deciding where you want to go to uni, and when you do your research, that kind of stuff. So all your applications are done through UCAS. We will touch on sort of how that works later, but you get your 5 choices. That's all done through UCAS, and then that's where you look for. That's where your profile will be updated, and you keep track of all your progress as you work towards results there. Really. So I guess just to sort of give you a little bit of context as to where we are in the sort of UCAS time frame, time scale, would you be able to just quickly run us through sort of where we are in terms of UCAS, please, Ben?
Yeah, definitely. So again, this is just kind of setting everybody up to kind of be in a position to go, okay, so what do I need to do? How do I need to do it? And UCAS is obviously the first place that you need to start looking, and will be a reoccurring sort of website that you'll use. And then obviously in terms of when you start to sort of hit some of those deadlines, this year has been slightly disruptive in terms of that timeline. So hopefully as we go into the next year, if you are in year 12 or even if you're a little bit younger and you're exploring those options now, this will be kind of useful. So ultimately, your kind of UCAS application journey starts in the September that you get into year 13. So as soon as you start year 13, or essentially the September before you start university, is when you can apply for university. There is essentially a whole year worth of process that needs to kind of be ticked off for you to be able to apply for university in the following September. So anytime before that, if you are thinking of sort of doing that research now, if you're looking at universities now, that's just going to set you up for you to make your decisions starting in September. So you need to kind of think about that ahead of September if you are looking to apply the following year when you finish in year 13. And that's obviously a good opportunity for you to go to open days and look on websites. And as universities start to open up, you'll actually be able to go onto the university campuses and explore those more, because of course all of our open days have been very much digital over the last 12 months. So using this time effectively, whether it's online or as it opens up to be more physical, start to research, because then UCAS opens in September. Now, if you are thinking of applying for any of the sort of competitive universities, and when I say competitive universities, really I'm just talking about Cambridge and Oxford here. So Cambridge and Oxford University, or if you're applying for any of the sort of more specific courses like veterinary science, medicine, or dentistry, they've got deadlines of normally the 15th of October. So you need to apply before the 15th of October to be with a chance to get onto those sorts of courses. So keep that in the back of your mind when you are applying, because that is also very, very important. Now, the deadline, the UCAS deadline, the deadline that UCAS put on their website is January 15th. So really, from when it opens in September up until January, that's your window to make those applications. So you've got a few months to sort of work it out, go through the application process, write your statement, make your choices. But really, they're trying to get everybody's application in by Jan 15th. Now, UCAS, it is more of a sort of soft deadline. It's a sort of fair sort of assessment on everybody that applies before that deadline. But a lot of universities will take applications after that January deadline. So don't panic too much if something goes horribly wrong, or if you change your mind or anything like that. You can still apply after Jan 15th, but just be aware that some of those competitive universities and competitive courses may have already had their spaces filled. So it's just something to be aware of. If you can get that Jan deadline, it is advised that you do so. And then ultimately, you'll start to receive your offers back by hopefully around March. So your universities have got a few months to make the decision and get their offers back to you by March. And then you've got until June to actually make a deadline on those 5 choices, narrowing it down from essentially the 5 choices that you put on UCAS, which we'll come on to in a second, down to a firm choice and an insurance choice. And that will be your sort of final decision that you'll need to make at that stage. The only other thing that I wanted to mention that isn't in my little timeline bit on this script as well is student finance. And student finance opens up in February. So once you've made that application in September, then you've submitted your application, you've got Christmas, you've got the Jan deadline. Once you start to get your offers back around sort of Feb, March time, that's when you can apply for your student finance. And it's good to kind of get that ball rolling pretty early on so that you know you've got your finance covered for when you start in September.
Cool. Yeah. Cheers, Ben. Would you also agree that it's probably worth actually starting to do your sort of research now if you haven't done so already?
Yeah, I think so. I think, as we say, because obviously it's been more difficult recently to do that kind of research, to go to universities and that sort of thing, because everything is sort of digital. But I think there's still quite a lot of information and a lot you can get from a university through their online platforms, through things like live streams, for instance. We can talk about all the sort of different areas of the university. We can talk about the courses. You can speak to students. You can speak to academics. So I think even if the next month or the next couple of months does still end up being digital in some form, there's still an awful lot you can get out of that. But also, because things are supposed to be opening up, we're hoping, fingers crossed, that open days will start to open up and we can have students onto campus. So if you've not already started to do your research at this point, the summer holidays and the sort of period over the summer up to September is going to be the perfect time for you to actually just start exploring your university options.
Cool. Yeah, definitely agree with that wholeheartedly. When you come back in September and actually, you're sending your application off in January, that time's going to fly. And, you're going to have other distractions like, uni work. You might be catching up with, work that you've missed through COVID and stuff like that. So
yeah,
do the research now. It's going to make that whole process just so much easier and more streamlined. So yeah, thanks for that, Ben. So I guess next thing we'll discuss is the actual application process itself. So the UCAS application is pretty straightforward. It's all done through that UCAS website, so that UCAS hub again. So to start with, you just simply create an account with UCAS. So that's just www.ucas.com/apply. So you make an application through them. So it's a government portal. And that's where you'll track all of your progress as well. So if you're applying through with your school and college, you'll be given a buzzword to sort of link to your account. It will just know that that's linked to that school when you make your application. And as Ben mentioned before, you get your 5 choices. So this is where that research comes in. You want to start thinking about, 5 courses essentially that you want to apply to at 5 different universities, or they can be at the same university. It's totally up to you. You've got 5 of those choices. You can apply for just one. You can send off one application if you want, and that costs £20. Or you can apply for 5 different choices, and that's £25, I believe. It makes more sense to send off multiple applications because it's just going to increase your chance of getting an offer back from university. The last thing you want to do is send off one application for any reason. It come back. Potentially rejected or something along those lines, and then you're already struggling, you're already on the back foot. So if you send off 5 choices, it might give you a little bit more of a safety net. And then one of those choices will become your firm choice. One of those choices will become your insurance choice. But we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later on. And then the actual application itself, it's pretty straightforward. It's just like a web form. You have to pop down some of your personal details, so things like your name, your address, your nationality, that kind of thing. Your university choices, not in order of preference, and they do stay anonymous. So that's worth remembering. The other universities that you apply to won't know where you've applied. So the universities receive just one application. So you send the one application to multiple universities, multiple choices. But the others, they don't know which one you've sort of ranked, best to worst, or the preferences, and they won't know where else you've applied to. And then you're just going to pop down your academic qualifications, so things like your GCSEs, especially things like maths and English if you've got those, any additional qualifications, and things like your A levels, your BTECs, your access qualifications, things along those lines. And then any work experience that you've got, it can be is optional, but if you have got it down, definitely stick it there, because it's something that's going to add something to your application. And there will be some courses that do have mandatory work experience in there as well, things like nursing. And then you'll also need a reference, and this will come from your personal tutor, someone at school or college. So, make sure you're turning up to lessons on time if you aren't doing so already, because it's your personal tutor that will be writing your academic reference. And then you'll write your personal statement, which Ben is going to discuss in just a moment. So yeah, that's pretty much UCAS in a nutshell, the actual application process. As I said, it's pretty straightforward. It can be a little bit lengthy. You do have to get a reference from your teacher. If you aren't in education, universities will take a professional reference. So if you're in work, maybe get your line manager or your boss or your team lead or someone like that to write you an academic reference, and that can suffice in some scenarios instead of an academic reference. And yeah, so each school or college will probably have some sort of internal deadline as well. So this might be a little bit before January 15th deadline. So it's typically before the Christmas break. So they've got time to write your references. And yeah, that's essentially what makes up the UCAS application. So get Ben to just discuss the personal statement, because you could argue this is sort of the most important part and also sort of the most difficult bit. So leave this one to you, Ben.
Thank you very much. I think touching on a couple of points there, because I think it links in with the personal statement. Number one being that that deadline that I didn't mention in the timeline, that school deadline, it varies from school to school. Some will do it right up to the wire, right up to the Christmas holidays. Some will have it as early, sometimes as even November. And that deadline is purely kind of set by your teachers, your careers advisors, to make sure that they've got enough time to actually be able to supply you with a reference, as Henrik just said, like a tutor's reference, and B, to kind of give you that additional support with a personal statement, which is what we're going to come on to. So, that deadline there is to kind of go, right, okay, we want to make sure that we've read your personal statement, that we're happy, and we've given you that support and advice for it. So if you are in a school, do have a quick chat with your sort of tutors and your careers advisors and that sort of thing, to make sure you know when that deadline is, so that you're able to kind of get their support with the personal statement, which we're going to come on to. And also, as Henrik has rightly said, your whole UCAS application, it is the same application that gets sent to all 5 of your university choices. So this personal statement, it is the same thing that it goes to all 5 of your choices. So if you're sat there thinking, okay, from my UCAS or from my university choices, I'm thinking I might apply for computer science and dance, for instance. Well, unfortunately, that means you've got the quite tricky scenario there of trying to write a personal statement that covers both course areas. And really what you're going to do there is split yourself down the middle and not make an application strong in either. So my first piece of advice is, as part of that research that we've talked about, make sure that you know what you want to do. Try and narrow down what you want to do as kind of best you can. We don't want to pigeonhole yourself too much, but we want to make sure that you are picking a course that is right for you, so that when it comes to your 5 decisions, you're going, okay, I'm going to write a statement that is solely about computer science, or solely about dance or psychology, or whatever it might be, so that everything in that statement is relevant to that course you're applying for. And it shows that you've got a level of commitment, you can attach relevant skills to it. So that becomes really, really important when it comes to the personal statement first and foremost. Just jumping off the back of something that Henry mentioned just before. So really, the personal statement is much like, if you've ever written a job application, there is normally a bit in a job application that says, why are you suitable? And that in very much in a similar vein as to what the personal statement is looking for. They're looking for you to kind of sell yourself to that university, to that course, to make sure that you are a right fit. So they want to make sure that they know kind of what your motives are for choosing this course. Have you got the relevant skills, as I mentioned? What things have you learned from college? What things have you learned from part-time work? What extracurricular stuff have you done? What makes you an individual that is going to work well on this particular course? Because the last thing they want is to get somebody that's not quite the right fit, but also they want to make sure that you are set up in the best possible chance to succeed at that university. So there's ticking all these different boxes to make sure that you are the most appropriate person in that regard as well. And they will use this to make a decision on your application. So as well as obviously looking at that UCAS application with those grades and with those GCSEs on, they will also look at this personal statement to make sure, again, that you are reflective of what they're looking for as an individual in the course. So just make sure you've got those things in mind when you're writing the statement. Now, the statement has got a hard limit of 4,000 characters or 47 lines. So when you try and paste it into the UCAS website, you will find that it will get to that 4,000 characters and it will completely cut off after that point. You won't be able to enter anything else. So make sure that when you're typing it into Microsoft Word, that you are checking that word count, checking that character limit, so that you know that you've fit everything in within that character limit before you obviously submit it over, so that nothing is missing. Now, we talk a little bit about structure at this point. Now, we don't want to make it so that every single personal statement is the same, because it is called a personal statement. It is personal to you as an individual. But there's definitely some key paragraphs that you can take away with this that will kind of help you structure this in the best possible way. So obviously you want an engaging opening paragraph. You want something that is going to immediately grab whoever's reading it, normally an academic or somebody from the admissions team. You want to immediately kind of grab those into the statement and make them sort of interested in what you've got to say, as you would with any sort of essay or similar scenario. Then you can talk about why you've chosen that particular course. So what is it that steered you towards this particular course area? And again, as we've discussed, that's going to be a similar course area across your 5 choices, preferably, so that you can sort of say, I'm really passionate about X, Y, and Z, or whatever it is. Then you talk about your suitability. So, you know, things like what have you developed from college? What skills have you developed from being in the classroom, being in a lab, whatever it might be. You can obviously then tie in things like your work experience to this point. That becomes really important. Any additional transferable skills that you can think of, they would all tie into here as to why you are a suitable candidate to be on this particular course. Then you can do a little bit about extracurricular activity. So we don't want this to kind of be all work and no play. We want to find out a little bit more about you as a person, because what we also want to find out is to make sure that you are essentially going to take full advantage of what university has to offer. You're not just going to university to sit in lectures, do the homework and go home and sleep. We want to make sure that you are going to be somebody that's going to get involved. Are you going to join a sports team as Henrik did? Are you going to join societies? Are you just going to kind of get involved with the university community? And stuff like this, anything that you can include here, also does add real benefit to your application. But you don't want to go too much about it, because sometimes these things won't necessarily correlate to what you want to study. So if you've got things like an EPQ, if you've got any sort of additional hobbies, any sort of volunteer work you've done, things like that are just great things to include, so we find out more about you as a person. And then you've got a conclusion, which kind of wraps everything up in a nice neat bow. It might link to something you've mentioned in your opening paragraph. It might be your sort of future aspirations, anything that you hope to get out of the university experience you can include in that conclusion. So there's quite a lot there to unpack, and we're not going to sort of sit on it all day, because to be honest, we could talk for hours about the personal statement. But those are just some key paragraphs to take away, and there's loads of resources online that you can access that will make it almost kind of easy for you to go, okay, here's the key things I need to talk about. What things can I slot into those things to build this statement? And this is where a bit of planning is going to be involved here. You know, depending on how you kind of work, whether it's a sort of mind map or whether you want to do like a bit of a list, just try and jot down as much as you can and as many skills that you've got and things that you've been involved in, and then maybe try and fit those around some sort of structure so that you can start to develop that statement. And again, there are loads and loads of resources that will help you do this. In fact, on the UCAS website, there is actually a personal statement builder that will ask you specific questions similar to what we've broken down there that will help you build that statement for you. So do utilize that. Do utilize some of the resources online, because there's lots and lots of things out there. And being able to talk about yourself it's a tricky skill, but it's a skill that is very, very key as you go on to kind of later on in life when you graduate university, you know, applying for a job and things like that. You know, being able to kind of highlight your key skills and transferable skills becomes very, very handy when you're applying for those jobs. So do take away some of the things that you learned from this experience. Don't just see it as a gateway to university. Really kind of put that passion into it, really kind of think about what you're doing and try and develop that statement as a sort of stepping stone to where you need to go. Couple of things to just think about before we move on the statement. And if anybody does have any questions, please do feel free to pop those in the comments for us as well. But a couple of things to think about is just make sure at least 2/3 of your statement is about the subject you've chosen and the suitability. That's why it was very top heavy with those key paragraphs about, you know, why you've chosen it, why you're suitable, you know, what experience have you got, etc. It needs to be kind of heavily focused on that, but always make sure that it's very much personal to you. Some students actually don't include work experience when they don't think it's necessarily that relevant. You know, they'll disregard things like retail work. They've got this sort of job in, I don't know, let's say McDonald's or in the co-op or wherever it is, and they think, well, that's not really relevant to what I'm doing. But actually, from those jobs, you've developed things like communication skills, teamwork, interpersonal skills. And they're great things that you can certainly mention in that statement. So don't ignore those. If you're sat there thinking, I haven't got any experience outside of McDonald's or whatever, make sure to include those, because those transferable skills are still really, really key. And anything else that you can think of, any sort of extracurricular stuff, again, just makes it a little bit more personal to you if you can. And just ultimately, don't be afraid to sing your own praises, because that is what this is all about. I don't think there's any other major things I want to mention at this stage. As I say, there's lots of resources online. So we'll move on from personal statements now. But as I say, if anybody does have any additional questions about the personal statement, do pop them in the comments and we'll try and come back to those as we go through the session.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, Ben. I just want to re-emphasize what you've already said as well. You know, you are only sending one so you send the same application to all your choices, same personal statement as Ben mentioned. So please don't name drop any institutions or any universities in your personal statement. Because, you know, if you say you want to go to X university and then you're applying to another one, you know, they're going to disregard that application straight away. So just worth bearing that in mind, and don't copy from anywhere else, because you will get, there's plagiarism software that will pick up your, you know, if you've copied that statement. So you don't want to undo your hard work by copying and then, you know, you can't apply to uni that cycle or something along those lines. No, thank you, Ben. Yeah, super useful. Personal statements, you know, really, really important, quite challenging as well. So definitely think about spending a bit of time doing some planning. You know, I don't think anybody that's nailed their personal statement the first time around. So, you know, be prepared to do 5, 6, 7, 8 drafts until you're happy to send it off. So you've done your personal statement, you know, you've sent off your application. So I guess it's probably worth just quickly mentioning what happens once you have actually sent off your application. You know, it might be a little bit of a nervy time. I think, you know, thinking back, I think I was a little bit scared, a little bit apprehensive. There's a little bit of a wait. You know, some universities might get back to you super fast. There might be a couple of months where you have to wait and you're in this limbo where you're waiting to hear back from, you know, your choices and whether you've been made an offer or not. But essentially, once you hit send on your UCAS application, it will get sent to all your chosen universities. And then, as Ben mentioned before, whether it's an academic or someone in the admissions team at that university, they'll essentially just assess your application, and they'll decide whether they think you're a right fit for that course at that institution, and they'll potentially make you an offer, or they might disregard your application, depending on things like your predicted grades, things like your personal statement, work experience, things along those lines. But you might also be asked to submit a portfolio. So we at DMU, we ask for portfolios for a lot of our creative subjects. It's just to show your creative side, you know, if you've got creative spark, that kind of thing. There's tons and tons of resources on our website about portfolios and what we look for exactly. So it does differ from course to course, and we do ask for a portfolio for a few different courses. So, you know, too much information to quickly run through now. But if you want to have a look on our website, we do have portfolio advice. You might also be asked to attend an interview. Now, at the moment, they are digital interviews. You know, this could be subject to change, obviously due to the pandemic. And then we are also asking for auditions for some of our, you know, performing arts-based courses as well. And then this will all be updated on UCAS Track. So UCAS will let you know if there's any additional information that's required to support your application. And then once that's been sent off, you know, it's just a case of, same again, just waiting to hear back from what sort of offers, you know, you might receive. So Typically, we're looking at things like conditional offers, and that is that the university is willing to give you a place on that course if you meet certain conditions, and those conditions do tend to be entry requirements or hitting a specific grade within your A levels, your BTEC, so your access course. If you hit that, so say if the university is asking for 3Bs, if you hit 3Bs, then they'll make you an offer. They'll let you onto that course. There's unconditional offers, which I don't think are too popular this cycle, but that is essentially the university is willing to give you a place on a course, irrespective of your grades. Now, this might be applicable to you if you are someone that is maybe a mature learner, or you got your A levels or your BTEC results a couple of years ago or last year. You already know what grade you've got, so you know whether you hit that entry requirement. You might also be offered an alternative course offer, and this essentially just means that the admissions teams or the tutors that have picked your application just think you might be better suited to a similar course, but maybe not quite the one you applied to. You have no obligation to accept that offer. If you don't want to go on that course, you can reject that. You can decline that offer as part of your choices, and then you might also receive unsuccessful offers. And that is what it says in the tin, really. For any reason you've not been successful with that offer, this could be down to your personal statement not quite matching with what they're looking for, or your predicted grades not being quite what they're after, or you might not have sufficient work experience, something along those lines. And then once you have heard back from your universities, let's say you get 5 offers back, you're in a position of power, you get to decline 3 of those offers, and then you'll make one of them your firm choice, one of them your insurance choice. So the firm choice is the university and the course you want to go to the most and what you want to study the most. And your insurance choice is just it's sort of safety net, just in case things don't quite go to plan with your firm choice. Your insurance choice typically has slightly lower entry requirements, just in case, as I said before, your grades don't quite match up with maybe what you're expecting. So, yeah, I mean, when you are thinking actually about your firm and your insurance choice, it's definitely worth just thinking about, a lot of students they'll prioritize their firm choice because that's where they really want to go to, but they won't give much thought to their insurance choice. Some students will end up at their insurance choice. You want to just, you want to pick the right insurance choice in case things don't go to plan, and somewhere you're going to be happy with, essentially, because, you don't want to just pop down any old insurance choice. You end up there, you don't enjoy it, and you end up having to endure 3 years of suffering at that university. I'm sure it wouldn't be that bad, but definitely, research your insurance choice just as much as your firm choice, essentially. And then you as Ben said, you got things like, and then you can start applying for things like student finance and your accommodation. I don't know if there's anything we missed there.
No, I think that's all good. I could always touch on sort of the other options available to students after this stage, if you like, talking about UCAS Extra.
Why not? Cool.
So yeah, as Henrik said, once you've got those offers back, you can start to make some decisions. And the first thing I'm going to quickly mention here, shouldn't take too long, is UCAS Extra. So if you have got your 5 offers back and they are either unsuccessful from all 5, or if you've changed your mind about your 5 offers and you want to add an additional offer onto your UCAS, say for instance you submitted all your offers, but you saw something online, you saw an open day, you went to an open day, you visited a university, and actually you've got this additional university or additional course that you want to add. Well, UCAS Extra allows you to do that. It allows you to add one extra choice through to UCAS, and it opens at the end of February. So it opens a bit of a strange time, but as I said, obviously to any students that are looking to apply after that Jan deadline, there are options, and UCAS Extra is one of those if you, as I say, are unsuccessful for whatever reason, or if you do want to add that additional offer because you change your mind. And students change their minds for all kind of sorts of reasons, which we're going to come into when it goes to clearing. But it's definitely a nice option to have, and not that many students are aware of it, and not that many students use it, but it is a very, very good additional sort of thing that's on there. And if you paid the full £25 on your UCAS application, there are no additional costs to you adding this additional offer. All you need to do is just contact the university, speak to them over the phone, and generally speaking, if you contact them around the sort of end of Feb, early March time, they will be able to kind of speak to you over the phone and make a bit of an assessment over the phone based on that application. So always make sure that if you are thinking of going down this route of UCAS Extra, where you are thinking of adding that additional university, if you just speak to them over the phone first, get in touch with them. We have got methods that you can contact us over the phone, you can chat to us via email, or you can actually speak to us using WhatsApp, and there's lots of different ways that you can get in touch with us. us, and we'll be able to obviously advise further about this. So UCAS Extra is a very, very handy thing that you can sort of jump onto. Now, it's worth noting that you can't change your personal statement through this process. We have had students that have actually submitted additional personal statements to us if they've had a bit of a change of course in mind, but that's where that conversation directly with the university comes in, because that will only be on a case-by-case basis. So if you are thinking, actually, I made these 5 choices before Christmas, but it's come to Feb, March, and I've actually gone, oh, I really want to change, I want to do something else, it's worth just having a chat with them first if you are in that particular position. So that is where UCAS Extra comes very, very useful. We're going to touch a little bit on results day in just a second, but the other thing that I want to talk about here, because it links quite closely, is clearing. So clearing opens later on in the cycle. It opens around normally sort of June, July time, or sort of a little bit closer to that kind of results day period. And essentially, it is very similar to UCAS Extra in as much as students can look at being made an additional offer. So they can speak to universities over the phone. They can say, hey, look, I've got these grades, particularly if it's at results day. You can say, I've got these grades. What can you do for me? You know, can I jump onto this course? What are the grades for X, Y, and Z? And again, it's an option for students to get a place at university if they fall into any of the following categories. If, unfortunately, on results day, they were unsuccessful, if, for instance, they put down their firm, they didn't get into their firm, if they've got down to their insurance, but they didn't get into their insurance either, then they might be opted straight into clearing. And this is when they can speak to those universities and actually potentially be made an offer there and then over the phone. If you get to results day or a little bit closer to results day, and you are again in that position where you're thinking, well, I applied for this before Christmas, but I have changed my mind. Again, clearing is really, really useful for this as well, because again, you can speak to them over the phone and again, be made an offer. And then of course, if you are in that position where if you actually didn't apply for university at all, previous to January, and you're thinking, actually, I've seen all my friends on results day going to university and I want to be a part of that, you can again speak to us over the phone around sort of clearing time and actually be made an offer there and then. So it's really an option for those students to kind of get to university, or give them an additional step to university if you fall into those categories, if you know things don't go quite to plan, or if you do change your mind or whatever it might be. Clearing is absolutely brilliant for that. As I say, it tends to open that little bit before results day, so you've got a little bit of a window to sort of apply, and that'll be applicable for the results day, the A-level results day, for students that get their BTEC results a little bit early, and then it's actually open a little bit after results day as well if you're waiting for any sort of GCSE resits and that sort of thing. So do take a look at clearing, and do take a look at and just be aware of what clearing is. Because again, thousands of students go to university through clearing, and it is a very, very good option. And typically our phone lines are open very, very early in the morning on results day. So if you are thinking, actually, I do need some, I do want to speak to somebody, I do want to have a chat with somebody, just give us a ring. It'll be on the website, and we'll be able to kind of advise further through that process. The way that it kind of works, it's a little bit different to UCAS Extra, but the way that this kind of works is you actually are made a verbal offer over the phone that normally lasts for 24 hours. So if you speak to us over the phone, you let us know what your grades are over the phone, and we can say, okay, based on the grades that you've told us, we can make you an offer for this course. All you would then need to do is sign up to UCAS if you haven't already, or go onto your UCAS, go onto your clearing option and actually add that clearing option on there. It's pretty simple when you get to that process, but because results day can be quite a stressful time of year, it's always just worth making sure that you get all that advice. And again, like I say, I can't emphasize this enough, speak to the university and just make sure that you are in a really good position to get yourselves those offers if you are unsure about anything. Because I say there's lots and lots of really helpful people over the phone that will be able to kind of advise further. So that for me is kind of UCAS Extra and clearing in a nutshell. I don't know whether there's anything that you wanted to touch on really quickly about results day, Henrik.
Not really. I think you nailed it. Very informative. I think the only thing I'd mention maybe about clearing is I think it's sometimes unfairly sort of demonized. There's sometimes some negative connotations that go along with things like clearing. But Ben said before, thousands of students go to university through clearing every year. And when you graduate, your certificate at the end to say you got a 2-1 in whatever, it doesn't say anywhere in it that you went to university through clearing. You get the same qualification as everybody else that maybe got there through the main cycle. So yeah, and it's just a really, really good additional tool, I think, that might be usable if you need to use it. So yeah, absolutely. It's like you say there, it's not just for those students that are sort of unsuccessful or things go wrong. It is literally, I guess, it's there for
a variety of different people. And if you're like me and you're really indecisive and you sat there thinking, oh, have I made the right decision? Well, you've got a bit more time to research, essentially, leading up to that results day and leading up to sort of the September start days. You could literally ring up a university around clearing and go, well, I applied for this, but actually I really, really want to do this. And you might be in luck at that stage, depending on how many places they've got left. It's good to just ask. And that's why I've put some details in the chat now, just in case anybody is actually in that position now thinking, okay, well, I've actually made my application and I'm actually thinking I might want to change. Do just drop us a line. The numbers and the details are in the chat now if you are thinking that and you do want some additional advice, because I'm sure we'll be able to help you out.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Ben. So results day, obviously linked to clearing, which we previously mentioned. Just a few tips really for results day. It's sort of what it is. It's pretty daunting, pretty scary. Try your best to get a good night's sleep the night before if you can. Obviously, that might not be realistic. You might have sort of all the butterflies, but yeah, things like try and just get like a breakfast in you in the morning, just because same again, it might help with the nerves. But do prepared for an early start. So UCAS Track, where you can obviously check the status of your application, does go live from around 8 a.m. on results day. So just going to caveat that by saying, that UCAS Track website does sometimes crash. I think it's crashed pretty much every single results day. So, yeah, it might crash because, thousands and thousands of students are trying to access that website and the traffic just destroys it. But yeah, it might be a good opportunity to give your university you applied to a call on the phone. But we typically would say collect your results from college. Now, obviously, we don't know how that's going to look. It might be that you access them through some sort of online portal because of COVID and that sort of stuff. And we do say try your best to avoid going on holiday. I don't know how much holidays they're going to be this summer, but if you're thinking of going holiday around sort of mid-August, just bear in mind that, you might find some circumstances where you need to be at a computer with your qualifications, whether that's speaking to different universities, sorting out your accommodation, student finance, all that good stuff. It just makes it a little bit easier if you are, grounded. But when the lines do open in the morning, you do have confirmation. So you can call through to the universities that you've applied for and you can ask them if you've got in. So this could be your firm choice or your insurance choice. Now, unfortunately, they can't tell you your grades, but they can tell you if you've got in or not. So that if you've applied for a course and it asks for 3 Bs and you've got in, then you've probably achieved, at least 3 Bs. So you don't have to worry too much there. There's also something called adjustment. Now, this is for students that exceed their offers. So find yourself in a position where you've actually done better than what you were expecting. You might be able to look at a university that maybe has slightly higher entry requirements or a course that has slightly higher entry requirements. You can have a look. You don't lose your original place. So you can just sort of window shop, have a look around. Same scenario, same process where you just speak to those universities on the phone. You get a few days just to confirm that. And then same again, you get to consider all your options. So, if you do find yourself in a position where you've actually, you've done well, you can go through clearing to actually go to maybe a slightly higher regarded course or institution. So there you can see the sort of positive aspects of clearing and that kind of thing. Results day. But yeah, just to sort of touch on as well, back to sort of, well, not back to clearing, but if you are going to be changing your university or changing your course, it is worth just calling student finance, and they can update all that admin on their end, and it just keeps the whole process pretty streamlined. Your accommodation as well. Maybe if you pay things like deposits, maybe you need to speak to that university just to get your deposit back, and you might need to pay deposit for another university to sort yourself out some accommodation if you are thinking of moving away. If you are applying to university for the first time during clearing, so maybe if you're applying around results day and you hadn't sent off an application before that, just remember to apply for student finance if you are looking to do so, because it can take around 6 weeks to process. And the closer you leave it to that start time of your start date of your course, you're running risks of potentially not having those funds available when it comes to term starting, because you normally get your first installment of your maintenance loan on your first day of uni. So if you apply ahead of time, it's just going to sort of avoid any of those sort of hiccups, I suppose. I think, and that's pretty much sort of UCAS and applying. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I think that's covered everything top to toe. I mean, like I say, we mentioned about UCAS before. We did a bit of a timeline. We looked at the application process. Unfortunately, stuff like that we can't really show because we can't access the system ourselves. But it's fairly self-explanatory. So the whole process is just an online portal. You mentioned obviously track. I talked about personal statements a little bit, and then I think we've covered everything.
Do you have a top tip for our viewers when it comes to applying to university?
I think it's definitely consider those options. Something you said earlier that reminded me actually was, we've had students that have gone to various universities, or people that I've spoken to have gone to various universities, and they did that little bit of research and they went, yeah, okay, cool. I'm gonna go to this university. I'm gonna do history because of this reason, whatever. But they didn't look into more detail about things like what the 3 years of that university sort of entail. So they got to their second year and suddenly the course sort of shifted, or it started to go in a different direction that perhaps they weren't so happy with. And they started thinking, well, actually, this is not what I wanted to do. So when you're doing that research, do make sure that for things like the course, you do look at all 3 years, because that, I think, is quite a key part of that research, to make sure that you don't get to that second year and go, well, this isn't what I wanted to do. And you have to kind of reevaluate, do you stick it out or do you go and find other options? So, I have met people that have done that. It's worth just considering that as one potential route, I think, in terms of that advice. Is just, it's all about research. There's so many things that we've talked about today that will impact the things we've talked about, whether it be the course choices, whether it be your sort of firm and insurance was the other thing that you mentioned, Henrik, there, making sure that you're aware of what your insurance option is. Because doing that research early, when it gets to sort of September time, you have only got that sort of September, October, November period to kind of do that research. And most universities will run their open days on the same Saturday. And that really limits how many universities you can go to visit if you're doing them sort of physically. So I think research ultimately is going to just be your key for this early stage, just so that you are as informed as possible. You understand the process, you understand what university is like, so that when it comes to making a decision, you're making the right decision.
Yeah, I think fundamentally it all does fall back onto research. And I think just for me, what I'd say is, if you do find yourself in a position where maybe you have to think about using clearing, it might feel a little bit panicked, especially if, you are looking at clearing on results day. But just take your time, assess your options, and just make sure you're doing the right thing. Speak to your family, speak to your friends, just compose yourself, and then, make the right decision. And yeah, I'm sure you will. So I think that's pretty much it from us this evening. Thank you for tuning in. Do appreciate you giving it your time. You can watch back on all of our previous streams that we've done on our YouTube channel, covering other various topics on university, if they're find them interesting. And yeah, just from us. So sort of good evening, and yeah, stay safe, stay healthy. And look after yourself, as fingers crossed we start to go back to a little bit more normality, and keep an eye on our website with hopefully we can do some face-to-face open days in the coming months, but that is a fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've popped the links to the open days, as Hamish just mentioned, as well as a couple of other links. If you do want to get in touch with us, you can find those all in the comments just there, so do check those out.
Cool. See you guys. Thank you.